So thanks so much, Jenny, as always, for leading us today.
Thank you, Mark. Such a joy to be here with you all. And thank you, IJS, of course, and our sponsors, Sharon and Rich. May your beloved mother, Gloria's blessing memory just continue to bless and inspire you. So I want to invite you to close your eyes for a moment and just take a deep breath. And thank yourself for showing up for your practice. Thank each other for holding space in this collective moment of breathing and healing and compassion in this vast field of practice. May we use this time to practice our presence, showing up exactly as we are, exactly as we need to be. And may each breath be a bridge from our bodies to our being, and our being to our becoming. So here we are in this new week of the Omer. As Mark mentioned, there are many ways to translate Netzach. I love the definition of endurance or persistence, which is what I'm gonna work with a little bit today, but it's that energetic pulse that keeps on going. It's that breath which keeps on breathing, our hearts that keep beating, our minds that keep thinking, our bodies that keep feeling, all the things. In preparation for being with you today, I was thinking about a teaching of Reb Zalman, Shachter Shlomi of blessed memory, who taught that if Hod, which is next week's Sphira of loving attention, if Hod is the symphony, the mellifluous flow of music that arises from a gathering of instruments, Netzach, what we're focusing on this week, Netzach is the metronome. It's the flow itself. It's the pulse of energy that reverberates within the music and keeps that beat going. And of course, anyone who has played music or been a part of a team knows you can't create a collective piece of anything without that steady, energetic beat. So today we're going to bring our attention to that flow in the larger field of chesed, so loving connection, and how we stay connected to love and sustain that connection. So according to Jewish mysticism, God provides this constant flow of chesed and life energy to the world, which is always flowing. Without this energy, nothing could exist. And that constant flow sometimes feels like it's impeded or ignored. But this practice is an opportunity for us to awaken to its presence. And there's a teaching by a 16th century Jewish mystic named Moshe Cordovero, who wrote in his book Tomer Dvorah, that God could actually stop this flow of loving energy at any moment, but chooses not to, even in the face of insults from God's creations, from our forgetfulness, from our mistakes, from our defiance, that even though we may experience disconnection, that flow is ever present. And I think this offers us a powerful example for how we can stay connected to that flow in our own lives. And in my experience, that is not always easy. When I experience pain in my body, I recently got like a diagnosis, I'll be okay, but it's not a great one. And it's easy in those moments to sort of turn on oneself and feel a sort of antagonism toward the body. But really, to me, it's a call to keep loving this body that, while fragile, is still performing so beautifully for me and keeping me going. When a congregant says something really hurtful or does something hurtful, I'm challenged to stay in loving connection with this person I feel charged with loving and caring for. When my child is oppositional, it's tempting to withhold that love, at least temporarily. Right? So many of us have been repeatedly challenged by another person, or even coming flush with our own failings and deficiencies until we reach a point where we feel like, our anger will boil over, or will disengage. And this is precisely the moment, I think, when chesed v'netzach, staying connected to love, can help us. So how do we do this? We practice. So in this practice, we're essentially committing ourselves to keep loving. I will keep loving you, whoever the you is, because it's a practice I am also committed to within myself. So if I fail or I mess up or I fall short, I will not withhold that loving connection from myself. And as I build this capacity within myself, I'm better equipped to live this out, to extend it towards others as well. And I want to offer one more way of thinking about how we can persist in loving connection, despite the very natural temptation to withhold it, especially when we feel hurt or angry. So Adi, I'm going to ask you to bring up the text. Great. Okay. So here we have a text actually that's going to build off of a verse from this week's Torah portion. Sometimes it just so happens that there's a beautiful thread of connection between the Torah portion of the week and the day of the Omer. So in this week's Torah portion in Kedoshim, we read the very famous and important verse of Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, ani Hashem. Love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yod-He Vav-He. And about this verse, the Mei HaShiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe, has a beautiful commentary. He says, one must uphold this mitzvah to love your neighbor as yourself, even though you have a deep awareness of your own deficiencies. So too, one must love the other, even though you are aware of their faults. That's why the verse teaches, I am Yod-He Vav-He. For just as the Holy One has an intimate awareness of your shortcomings and loves you both nevertheless, so too you must love yourself and one another despite your flaws. As it says in the Talmud, whether this way or that way, you are both called my children. Thanks, Adi. So this commentary, I think, reminds me of two things, at least. The first is that my capacity to love others is directly connected to my own sense of being loved, feeling at home and in love, not just in the moment, but being settled be'ahava in my own life, in my own body. And the second is that this love is always flowing, despite my faults, despite your faults. God knows we're flawed. We know we're flawed. And still we have the capacity to stay connected in love, to feel that pulse of loving energy, which is ever available to us. And so now I want to turn our attention to our practice and to invite us to work with this energy of netzach, of chesed b'netzach, staying connected to love in the body. And when we feel love coursing through our bodies, when we experience that felt sense of I am loved, we cultivate love in a way that I think we can share it more generously with others. So let's find our seat. I invite you to settle in and allow your body to catch up with your mind by taking a couple of deep breaths. How can you create some space and some ease in the body? Allow the breath to help you soften where you can. Allow yourself the release which only you can give yourself. Breathe yourself into this moment. We're going to practice paying loving attention to our breath by just keeping on breathing. You may even gently rest your fingers on the pulse of your opposite wrist. And in feeling your own pulse, that is chesed b'netzach. Once that steadiness begins to take shape, I invite you to practice just breathing into the steady drumbeat of love for yourself. Thoughts will come and go. Bodies will do their thing. But we're going to orient ourselves towards love and being loved. Breath, I love you. Beating heart, I love you. Breathing lungs, I love you. Oh, here's that story about such and such. I love you too. Meet the fullness of your experience with love. We're practicing keeping the heart open and flowing. No matter what, I will not withhold my love from you. So we'll sit for the next 7 or 8 minutes, and I'll bring us together with the sound of my voice. We are here on this earth, in this life, to practice love, self-love, and collective love. And as we practice breathing greater love into our bodies, I'd like to think that we build the inner pathways and roads and highways that will help us carry that love out into the world. And as we leave this period of practice, may we remember that we have the capacity to be metronomes of love, to persist in love, even when it feels hard, even when we meet obstacles and experience resistance along the way. We are here to endure in breathing our way into deeper love in our bodies and the world. And as we go forth, may our breath be a reminder of that persistent love, pulsing through the universe and pulsing through each one of us. I wanted to close our practice today with a poem from Maya Angelou. It's called Continue, and I believe she wrote this for her goddaughter, Oprah, but we can imagine for a moment that she wrote it for each one of us. Nadia, if you want to bring up the text, you can read along or just listen. Into a world which needed you, my wish for you is that you continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and defenseless. Continue to take the hand of the despised and diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Continue to plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and infirm, and count that as a natural action to be expected. Continue to let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Continue to ignore no vision which comes to enlarge your range and increase your spirit. Continue to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which sets aside riches for you before you had a name. Continue. And by doing so, you and your work will be able to continue eternally. Thank you all for practicing with me and with one another. I'm going to turn it back to Mark.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Jenny Solomon. That hit the spot. Thank you so much. It was just great. Beautiful teaching, beautiful practice. Wonderful way to begin this week of Netzach together, and to do it with chesed, with loving kindness and loving connection. So it really leads beautifully into the practice of supporting each other with chesed, with loving connection, both for those who have departed this world and for each other. So we invite those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, if you are so moved, to share the name or names of anyone you're including today, holding in your heart, and put that in the chat box either now or after Kaddish. And for the rest of us who may not be saying Kaddish, you're still participating simply by being present and witnessing and expressing loving connection, chesed, for those who are. And we invite them to rise in body or in spirit for the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yikadash Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
V'yamad Yivrach Yirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayei Chon, V'yomei Chon, V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala,
Kaman,
Bisativ,
Kareem,
Imru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi
Yehi
Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Barach,
Barach,
Olam
Olam
Olamei Amaya,
Amaya,
Yitbarach
Le'etzahar,
v'yishtabach, Yitpa'ar v'yitmamam v'yitzaseh, Yitzadar v'yitaled, Yihalal v'shmei dibusha b'richu, La'elam yikum birchata v'shirata, Tushbachata v'nefechata, Ta'amiram ba'ama v'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chein Aleinu v'Yal Kol Yisrael, v'Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimrama, Uyase Shalom, Aleinu v'Yal Kol Yisrael, v'Yal Kol Yoshvei Tevel, v'Imru, Amen.
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 So thank you all. Thank you all so much for your dedication to this practice. Thanks to Rabbi Jenny Solomon leading us today from Raleigh, North Carolina, and to lead off this week of Netzach. Thanks to Adi Stein, as always. And thank you so much to Sharon and Rich Dunoff, who sponsor our practice today in loving memory of Rich's beloved mother, Gloria Dunoff, Zichronah Livracha, on the occasion of her 5th yard site. Thank you so much, Sharon and Rich. And also I want to welcome any members of the Beth Meyer community who are joining us today. Really wonderful to have you with us. And thanks for sharing your wonderful rabbinic resources with the IJS community and vice versa. And as always, you're invited to stay on for questions about today's teaching or reflections on the practice today. We'll continue tomorrow. We're very excited. Rabbi James Jacobson Mazels will be leading us in practice tomorrow, and our executive director, Rabbi Josh Fagelson, as usual, will host on Tuesday. We have a wonderful array of teachers this week. Rabbi James Jacobson Mazels tomorrow. Sabrina Sojourner will lead us on Wednesday. Another Tar Heel rabbi from Asheville, North Carolina, Rabbi Batsheva Meiri, will lead us this Thursday on Netzach, B'Netzach, and I will lead as we sit into Shabbat on Friday, Hod B'Netzach. Looking forward to that. So hope you can join us for any of all these. Just a reminder that all the meditations as well as yoga and Torah study are recorded and on our YouTube channel. So if you have not subscribed, you don't have to subscribe, but certainly will make it easier for you to access it. But you can find recordings of this and all the meditations there, and we hope you make use of it. For those who are leaving us now, wishing you safety and blessings for the rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon. Jenny, well, I was not kidding. Thank you for that. Exactly what I needed to hear today. And I want to remind people you can put questions in the chat box, and if you preface it with capital Q question, I can keep an eye on that. Okay, so start swirling up. I see from Laura, there's a question. No matter your words, no matter what, I will not withhold my love from you. Does this goal contradict Gevurah wise boundaries, or can it be in harmony? That's a great question. Great.
That is a great
Midot and mindfulness question. Okay. Talk about soulful parenting. There you go. Okay. Okay. Take it away.
Oh boy.
Well, what is the role? I mean, it's really, we one of the things about moving week by week through a particular sphera or midah is that we're focused on that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we have to be aware that that's just, that's one in a field of midot that are all mingled. And the idea that each midah is connected with a specific midah per day that reminds us, oh, it's not a fixed thing. It's a blend, it's a algorithm. So what is the role of Gevurah? And this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but Netzach is that sort of constant connection. That poem, by the way, was just, oh my God, so perfect. What a great poem. It's like, did you commission Maya Angelou to write that poem for this? I mean, that's so perfect. Constancy and energy and continuous practice in Chesed. So where does Gevurah come in there?
One of the things that I love about this spherotic, just sort of orientation is that it's in constant flow, as you suggested. Like we can kind of get in with a microscope on one particular aspect or the other, but the lines are connecting every which way. So to me, it's kind of like the wisdom of meeting the moment of, do we need to turn up the volume in this moment on Netzach or turn it down? I was on a long run on Sunday morning, and I was noticing like the determination and the endurance that comes with being a runner, and how that can slide into, apropos of Jonathan Slater's beautiful teaching on Netzach this week, how that can push into powering through. So we're always making those micro adjustments if we're awake and aware to figure out what feels right. But to your question, I will not withhold my love from you. I think we can we know this from our practice. We can set clear boundaries and sort of say no, even while we're loving. Like the love is flowing, and it is actually through the boundary that the love is felt. Perhaps not always in the moment, but that's the intention.
Well, yeah, I just guess I would add to that I mean that's hopefully that's our intention, although it can be used in ways that do push away, right, and disconnect, right? So right. The practice is really, and it's very challenging, but all the ingredients are present for us to be able to do that, to be able to set a boundary in a way that maintains or even deepens the connection, or that serves the purpose of connection. Like you were saying, Jenny, like in the moment, it may feel disconnected, but tomorrow or next week, you might say like, actually that allowed for connection that otherwise might not have happened.
Yes.
And I think maybe many of us have had that experience of setting a boundary or having someone set a boundary with us that provided a buffer or space or time that was necessary to allow whatever was interfering with the connection to dissipate enough to restore the connection. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not so simple.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify too, there was a good question because many folks are either have or currently engaged in this awareness and action mindfulness and midot practice. So the midah that we're engaging in this week is called zirizut, which we translate as energetic response. Just to be clear, that is associated with this sphira netzach. So it's kind of incorporated within it. You might say they're synonymous in a way, so you don't need to parse it that much. Just want to avoid confusion. Like, I thought we're doing zirizut, and why are they talking about netzach? Same general idea, different name.
Yeah.
Is it okay to put the names of pets in for Kaddish? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever or whoever you feel a sense of loss that needs expression, that's what it's here for. So I'm just scrolling up. I have another question, but I just want to see if there's one. So here's my question, because I will admit I get confused about how, when we have these two different sphirot each day, what we're talking about here, how they interrelate. So we have one day during the period of the Omer, which is like today, Chesed Shebe Netzach. But we also had a day during the Omer, which was Netzach Shebe Chesed, which was, consistency, continuity, and Chesed. So, and I don't think it matters that much, but it's all good. But how do you understand that? Maybe for yourself, like the distinction, if there is one for you. I don't know. Was wondering about that.
I certainly can't answer that from a scholarly perspective. Maybe Jonathan has some thoughts on that, which I would be eager to learn. But I think we can start with Netzach. What does it mean, which is the focus point for this week? What does it mean to just to hold the pose, to just keep coming back, to stay engaged? And then the refining point, the lens through which we can practice that. is through love, is through loving
Mhm.
connection.
Mhm.
So that's sort of how I think about it.
I totally get that, and that makes sense. And this was beautiful. And I'll just say personally, very relevant at the moment. So thank you for that. Also, the metronome, the Reb Zalman teaching about the metronome, which I had never heard, is also beautiful. It's just a great image and metaphor for this
I love
too.
that.
The pulse, putting that was beautiful as well. A reminder that
learned that. Yeah, I learned that from a student, a congregant who I was teaching a couple years ago, a doctor actually, and it wasn't anything that I had practiced before in my own meditation training. And now it's one of the embodied shapes that I come back to all the time when I consider where to rest my hands. I just find, of course, the pulse is steady. It's not static. If you were to watch it on a machine, right, our pulse would vary. But there is that steady drumbeat that I find incredibly both soothing and enlivening all at the same time. And when I can feel really disconnected from my body, it's just a very easy, subtle way to bring me home. And I find that when I'm in a moment where I am sensing and I'm growing in awareness that I'm feeling disconnected outside of meditation, like in a difficult meeting or a difficult social interaction, it's actually something that I can do without anybody noticing. And I'm right back home. I'm right back home.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. So that pulsation that we pick up, the metronome of the body. So there's a question which I want to address in the limited time we have that came up, which let's see, Karen's raising this question about how do we love ourselves so we feel better when our body is feeling tense, or you alluded to this, basically whenever we're struggling with our body, or body is letting us down, or we're not comfortable or happy about what's happening with our body. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, in those moments, which I'm very familiar with in my own experience, you could remember to breathe, and that and have that association with I'm still being breathed, and that is love. But the pulse is just another way to come back into connection. And I think I've practiced it enough now, and the association is so close that I merely touch my wrist and it's just like love, just pulsing.
Here's another thing that came to my mind. I was thinking about that. I'm just thinking, playing around with this metronome pulse reality. Is that think about, well, the pulse, that has two parts, right? It has the pump, and then it has the pause. Like it's a wave. It's a wave that's happening. So I'm wondering about, also thinking about maybe Chesed B'Netzach as not regulating the rate, but being able to love the rate. It's kind of what you were saying, I think. Loving the rate for what it is. Like my pulse is racing, or my pulse is really low, or my pulse seems just right. Good, it's which does not mean there isn't necessarily an issue that needs to be addressed, right? But I can love the fact I have a pulse, and my pulse is here. It's my heart. It's ticking away.
Yeah.
Someone put something in the chat box, was making me think that somehow
and for whatever isn't working, like that still is happening. That is true.
That's what you said. I mean, that's what you kind of said when you were speaking about whatever has come up for you, right? That the gratitude for what is. So maybe that's another way of thinking about Chesed B'Netzach. Is that if the Netzach is paying attention to that, that pulse and metronome that's going, we're bringing Chesed to that.
Yeah.
As well as what you were describing, which I understood as like, bringing the energy of Netzach in service of Chesed, and both. Also, it occurred to me like it's like a dance. Like these two the pairing the midot is like a dance,
Yeah.
you know, and like, okay, so who's leading right now, you know, and switching off back and forth.
It's so great.
Or maybe no one's leading. Maybe they're just, you know, whatever. Who
Right.
says someone has to lead?
Right. Right.
So we have another pair dancing tomorrow and
Great.
throughout the week. And Jenny, thank you. This was just wonderful week
Thank
as
you.
always.
So
You
grateful
know,
to be here.
and I know deeply, deeply appreciated by everybody here. So thank you all for being here. Thanks, Adi. We hope to see you tomorrow, Rabbi James Jacobson Maisels, or sometime later on in the week. Thanks, Sharon and Rich, for supporting the practice today. Blessings, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll see you.